Was Amy Winehouse the new Nirvana? That's kind of a strange concept, isn't it? They're two completely different types of artists, but I came up with this idea because I recently watched that Amy Winehouse biopic called Back to Black, which was an okay movie. I thought they kind of skimmed the surface as far as her story goes. But I'm not here to talk about that movie. I'm here to talk about the fact that it sparked an interest in me to start listening to Amy Winehouse. So I went and I listened to her album, Back to Black, which is actually her second album. I thought it was a solid album. It wasn't the type of music that I usually listen to, but it's a really good album. The songs are really good. So I started looking into her history. I thought maybe it would be cool to do a video on Amy Winehouse. And I noticed they mentioned some parallels between Amy Winehouse and Nirvana. So I thought this would be a pretty good idea for a video essay of some sorts. So that's what I want to talk about in this video. First, I'll talk about how Nirvana changed the musical landscape, then how Amy changed the musical landscape, and the similarities between both of them as artists, as well as the similarities in their personal lives. Now, I know a lot of you are thinking it's comparing apples to oranges, but bear with me on this one because I think I have something here. Let me start talking about Nirvana with Nevermind. Now, for me, it made a big impact on how I listen to music because before that, I was listening to mostly heavy metal music. I listened to a lot of hair metal bands, but back in 1991, I was in college. One of my roommates showed me this Nirvana CD, and the first song I listened to was Smells Like Teen Spirit. And I started thinking it was pretty cool because it wasn't necessarily metal, but it was kind of heavy. So I became interested in Nirvana, and I started listening to my roommate's album, and I eventually bought my own copy. I got into Nirvana, and after that, I was really into grunge. I started moving away from metal bands and more into alternative rock. But one thing that this album, Nevermind, was known for was the fact that many people said that it killed hair metal, where a lot of hair metal albums were about the rock and roll lifestyle and parties and objectifying women. But this was completely different. It was more of a punk rock type of vibe. It had this anti-authoritarian vibe. It was more of a pro-feminism type of album as well. Nevermind also reignited interest in punk rock. It was very popular amongst Generation X and also led to punk rock becoming popular a few years later. The success of Nirvana caused a lot of record companies to start looking for alternative bands, which is why we had a lot of grunge and alternative bands come out. And that led to a lot of metal bands changing their sound, such as Metallica releasing the Black Album, and a lot of metal bands basically changed their sounds to fit this alternative rock landscape. Fast forward to the year 2006, Amy Winehouse hits the scene with her album Back to Black. That really had a significant impact on the musical landscape, but it had nothing to do with grunge or alternative. It was something completely different. She was bringing back British soul music and also helping out female artists in general. Amy Winehouse's Back to Black album was an album by a female artist, but it was a lot different than the other pop artists were putting out at that time in the mid to late 2000s. Back in 2006, there were a lot of pop albums released by female artists, such as I'm Not Dead by Pink, Back to Basics by Christina Aguilera, and The Sweet Escape by Gwen Stefani. But none of them sounded anything like Amy Winehouse. So her success paved the way for other British female artists. Probably the most notable one was Adele, but there were a few more, such as an artist named Duffy, and she had a song called Mercy. So in the same way that record companies in the 90s were pushing for alternative, record companies were now looking for female artists who had a unique style. And because of this, women in pop music were getting more recognition because that's what record company executives were looking for at that time. Now, Amy Winehouse brought back a type of music that really wasn't popular back at that time, and I'm talking about the 1960s girls groups. So if you watch the movie I was talking about, she talks about a girls group called the Shangri-Las. They had a lot of big hits. So one big hit was Leader of the Pack. Another one was something you might know from Aerosmith called Walking in the Sand. Basically, Amy Winehouse was someone who had a style of songwriting and singing that was very authentic. A lot of people related to it because her lyrics were about personal struggles. There's also another subplot in the movie where a lot of the songs on the albums were about her relationship with a guy who she was married to named Blake Field Civil. This guy was kind of a douche. He would leave her for his ex and then later take it back when she started getting successful. The whole movie explains that, but when you listen to the song Back to Black, It really makes sense because you can feel what she is feeling when you pay attention to the lyrics. Back to Black was also a critical and commercial success. She won a lot of Grammys for that album and also considered to be one of the best-selling albums of that time period. So now you may be thinking, how are these two things related? As I just described, two completely different scenarios. So let me elaborate on the premise. The first connection is that the two artists they both incorporated diverse influences in their music. Amy Winehouse brought back 1960s pop and soul and mixed it with contemporary R&B and neo-soul. Nirvana, on the other hand, mixed punk rock, hard rock, acoustic rock, and a little bit of heavy metal to create what was called grunge at that time. Another correlation was the fact that both artists were very authentic and were able to connect with people's emotions. Amy Winehouse's lyrics were about personal struggles, her relationships, her heartbreak, and other relatable topics. Kurt Cobain also wrote lyrics about personal struggles. For example, the song Smells Like Teen Spirit was about Kurt Cobain's ex-girlfriend, Toby Vale. Had the idea of Teen Spirit, which was a deodorant brand, something that reminded him of his girlfriend. He also talks about relationships on the song On a Plane, where he sings, I love myself better than you, I know it's wrong, what should I do? So that was another one. Another connection was that both Nevermind and Back to Black were both critically acclaimed. Back to Black was praised for Amy's singing, her style, her emotion, as well as the production value on the record. Nevermind was a success, sold millions of copies and topped the charts worldwide. Both albums also made a big cultural impact. Back to Black brought back British soul and helped pave the way for more female artists, and Nevermind brought back alternative into the mainstream. Both artists also helped pave the way for more artists, where Amy Winehouse paved the way for artists such as Adele, and Nirvana paved the way for more alternative bands that would come out afterwards. There were lots of them, but Weezer and Bush are two examples amongst others. The other connection that both artists were bringing back were retro sounds. Amy Winehouse brought back the sounds of the 60s girls groups, and Nirvana sparked an interest in some of the bands they were influenced in, such as the Pixies, R.E.M., and the Smithereens. Both albums can also be considered to be statements of intent by their creators. Amy Winehouse wrote her song to make a statement about the state of her personal relationships, and Nirvana wrote Nevermind with the intention of making a more accessible record, which showed the progress that they had made since their last album, Bleach. Now let me talk about some of the similarities between the two people who are the subject matter of this video, Amy Winehouse and Kurt Cobain. Both Kurt Cobain and Amy Winehouse struggled with personal demons, and they led troubled lives. Kurt Cobain struggled with heroin addiction and chronic depression. Amy Winehouse struggled with an eating disorder, substance abuse, mostly alcohol. Struggles of both these artists were very public in the media. Both artists also had a public image. Amy Winehouse was seen as this, quote, filthy mouth, down-to-earth diva with raw talent and poor impulse control. And Kurt Cobain was seen as the voice of the generation, but at the same time he was troubled and uncomfortable with fame. Both artists had these tumultuous relationships. Kurt Cobain's marriage to Courtney Love was also often the subject of media attention and public scrutiny, whereas Amy Winehouse had a turbulent relationship with the guy I was talking about, Blake Field DeCivil, and their struggles were widely publicized. Another similarity was that both artists struggled with drug use. Kurt Cobain had a heroin addiction. Amy Winehouse had problems with alcohol and other drugs. Finally, both albums died at the age of 27, so they are both part of the 27 Club. Kurt Cobain died from a self-inflicted shotgun wound, and Amy Winehouse died of accidental alcohol poisoning. So that's all. Let me know if you think I made a good case for Amy Winehouse being the next Nirvana, even though it's kind of a strange concept. But in the meantime, check out this video. I did some videos about Nirvana, so you can check that out. And please give the video a like. Helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe if you're not already. I do rock and metal reviews, rankings, and more. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.